Hello to everybody. May I leave the floor for Eugene?
Right. Welcome everyone to our little Zoom party. I think this is a accumulation of a number of projects and things that we've been doing over the last few weeks, months, and it's actually an international collaboration from various different countries. We have people from the States, from Turkey, from New Zealand, from Malaysia, India, and many, many more. So I want to just kick off this. This is going to be an informal event of some sorts. We do have a number of guest appearances whom we have invited. And when they do join, we're going to interact with them and have some communications with them, and particularly pick their brains a bit on psychiatry and mental health education, per se. Without me taking too much time, I would like to actually introduce Bulan first. Bulan is the chair and a co-chair of our section, Psychiatry, Medicine, and Primary Care in the WPA, the World Psychiatry Association. And he is also essentially the leader of all this little project. And without him, most of this wouldn't have been done. Bulan, over to you for your introduction and opening speech.
Thank you. Hello to everybody. I know there is a few number of people here now, but I'm sure the video recording in the YouTube channel will reach to more people. I'm one of the members of the team who arranged this, actually did less than Eugene, Rodrigo, Kemal, and especially Ramin and Joyce. The young colleagues did lots of things. I'm afraid David Baron is not with us yet. But anyway, let me say a few words about this initiative. As Eugene said, we are part of section on psychiatry, medicine, and primary care of WPA, World Psychiatric Association. And that association is working together with Association for Community Mental Health Promotion from Turkey, and in collaboration with several other countries, as Eugene has mentioned. Today, we are planning to have a Zoom party, but apart from this, I believe we will have similar activities in the coming months, or maybe weeks would be too ambitious, but in some months, I believe we will have other activities as well. The SEED group is the project group of the section, and in that SEED group, we have students, education, empowerment, and development activities in mental health. So this is the source of our plan or goal, I may say. May I stop here, Eugene? I have a lot of things, if you would allow me to speak, but since David is not here, maybe he will also add whenever he comes. Thank you. Let's have a good party.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so again, we're going to try to make this as informal as possible. So I would tell you, I didn't come in here with a prepared speech or anything. I'm just going to go with the flow. In the interest of time, moving on to something that we have planned, I would actually want to invite Ramin and Joyce, two of the main key players with regards to our little hashtag project. And with that, maybe I'll leave it to the both of them to have a small presentation and talk about this hashtag project, and hopefully to get it kick-started also, to get more people on board, and whoever who listens in with this will have some interest. Ramin and Joyce, over to you all.
All right, thank you, Dr. Eugene. I think, maybe I can just kick it off first, and Joyce can chip in, and we'll just have an informal conversation, all right? So I think the two of us first got involved with this hashtag project when we were brought in by our lecturers. I don't know, for me, Dr. Eugene was he's my lecturer. And he brought me into this, and he asked me if I would be interested to join, to be part of, something to help spread awareness about mental health and mental health issues. So I was interested. So I joined a few of the initial meetings, and I think I was hooked with the idea, and it really inspired me to try and make a difference. And so I think with a few other students from around the globe, we formed SEED under the supervision of the WPA section on psychiatry, medicine, and primary care. So, I'm curious, Joyce, what about you? What was your initial experience? How were you brought in?
So, Dr. Rodrigo, he is one of our psychiatrists in our team C. He asked my supervisor, and then my supervisor referred me actually. So, Dr. Rodrigo asked if I'm interested in this project that we can promote mental health to medical students or to other young doctors. So I thought, yes, I'll give it a try. And then we had a few meetings. And yeah, like you said, with other medical students from around the world. And that's sort of how we started. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's a pretty similar kind of experience that we've both had, wouldn't you say? And I think this brings up a point that I've been thinking about a lot actually recently. That is, when we want to empower people, whether it's with regards to the mental health promotion or in other aspects, I think having a good supervisor or a good individual who encourages you to do better and bring you in, I think is very important. And I think for that, I think Joyce and I are truly grateful for our lecturers who brought us into this, Dr. Rodrigo, Dr. Eugene, and I think this is something that we can all learn from and move forward. Whoever we are dealing with, whether it's patients and all, I think we can truly empower people by just being that little bit of encouraging hope for them. Yeah. Yeah. So I think when we started this project, we thought about the hashtag movement, and we agreed on the hashtag OMHJ, which stands for Our Mental Health Journey. Do you remember some of the conversations we had? Yeah.
Yeah, we spent quite a time deciding which hashtag to use. But we finally settled on the idea of OMHJ. It's short, and it also stands for what we want everybody to talk about. Yeah.
And I think one of the things we decided on our, because we wanted it to be inclusive of everyone, right? And it wasn't just like, oh, this is my journey, this is not your journey. I think that was one of the key conversations that we were having when we first decided on this. I think that's something that I remember.
Yeah.
And yeah, but along the way, I think we've had a lot of challenges as well.
Yeah,
right?
We do. It was a bit slow to kick off at the start, I remember. I think what helped it is that to have clear tasks to do that really pushed us, that really started off at the beginning. For example, we really started off when we are trying to write a frame or a plan of this hashtag movement. I think that really kicks the whole project on, and it's just nice that you and other people who are willing to step forward and then contribute as the project progress.
Yeah, and I think it was really nice to have to have people contributing their ideas and their thoughts. But I think one of the challenges was that we probably didn't have much of an organization. Maybe we didn't have we didn't have really a chairperson or a vice chairperson, a secretary, or anything. So in some ways, it allowed us to be more flexible, I would say. It allowed everyone to contribute their ideas more or less equally. But I think it also sort of limited our kickstart in some sense. Yeah, especially with, when we're working with people from, across different cultures and different time zones, especially. Yeah, I think the meeting times were always a bit difficult to arrange because of it as well.
Yeah, it's quite the structure of SEED is different from what I experienced before, because clubs in university, we usually have dedicated roles, but in SEED, we don't have that. It's just when we have a task, and if someone can do it, they will step forward, and this is quite new for me as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting, and it's a new and interesting experience for me as well. But yeah, I think we apart from that, I think probably moving forward, we could actually form some sort of organization. Do you think that would be beneficial if we had a president or a vice president per se, to sort of get things moving faster?
May we say coordinators?
Coordinators, sure.
Yeah, you and Joyce have already been the coordinators, one of the coordinators. I don't know what Eugene will say.
I love the idea, actually. I think one of the reasons why we've never bothered with, how do we say? I think one of the reasons why we never bother with formalities, it's that because this is an international association, I think if we start putting the traditional labels of president and secretary and all this, and this is coming from my own experience, even within my country, once you start putting the labels, the people at the top end, it's going to end up doing a lot of work. And more so when we are working with the international team. So when we put it as everyone is equal, like pretty much what Bulan said, coordinators or leaders or facilitators, or the more atypical kind of label, I find that do get things moving much, much faster. And I do agree with what Joyce mentioned also, the atypical, we have a task, who can do it? That works very well from an international perspective.
Maybe Bulan, that will be a good solution for inequalities, which is the theme of our World Mental Health Day. Of course, we can never be equal, all of us. We are different, but when we come together and we do whatever we can, the coordinators will help us. And maybe the senior people may try to be the persons to ask something sometime, but you don't have to listen to them all the time, of course. I'm sure you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point of view as well, that I think, it's very interesting, facilitator or coordinators to sort of facilitate the discussions that are going on. And I think this is truly fitting with this year's theme, which is, mental health in an unequal world. So I think this really brings up an interesting point. And I think it would lead us to the next point of discussion, which is our aims when we first began this project. I think for me personally, I was aiming to reach more people with this hashtag movement, and to get people to start talking about mental health issues. Because especially from where I'm from, Malaysia, I think we are just beginning to accept and talk more about mental health. And I think we can do much better. I think there's still room for improvement in terms of mental health literacy and so on. So I think that was my aim. I wanted to get people talking about mental health in general. What about you, Joyce?
Yes. So I think mental health, this concept, is still relatively new. We've only been like talking about it and defining them only for the past, like, I don't know, it's just not long enough. And I just thought that we still need to raise more awareness. We still need to promote it. There's so much stigma there to break. And also, as medical student, it is important to understand that, to provide better health service for people when we become doctors. So I just thought it's important things for us to talk about. And yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think apart from Joyce and I, there were also a few other students who were actively involved. I think Farhad, are you here? Would you like to share anything?
Just first of all, hello to everyone. I'm really happy for being here because I think, actually it's like trend for now, like being mentally good and healthy, but in a deep meaning, really, being healthy, like mentally, is very important for us, I think, and especially in this quarantine, like with this corona and health problems, because everyone is isolated, and everyone are. For example, me, I'm like student in Turkey, and my family is, Azerbaijan, and I can't meet with them like 2 years, and that's why I'm isolated from my friends, and that's why it's hard to keep going. And like this activities actually made us to think about it, and just I don't know, maybe made some strategies, and just to read and to study about it, and to make ourselves feel better and confident. And that's why just thanks to everyone who are here, and like that. I will tell another things in just in next time.
All right. Yeah. For those who aren't aware, those who are watching from YouTube, Farhad was actually one of the people who created our social media accounts. So he's technically our social media expert in some sense, but he's been really busy with his assignments and stuff as well. So yeah, I think this whole experience has taught me that even as medical students, we can actually make a difference. We can actually get people to start being aware of mental health issues. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting experience that I wish every medical student can have. Yeah, right. Thank you. Joyce, would you like to add on to that?
That was pretty good. I don't know what else to say, but yes.
I can add a few things if you want.
Yeah, go
Yes.
ahead.
I kind of hopped on rather late to the campaign train compared to you guys. And I personally was in the midst of a very important process for me because I was preparing for a very important exam. But I just want to say it's been a very wonderful experience. I think what we do is very important for people like who are not a part of the campaign, but also as a medical student or a recent graduate, to be able to be in the process of organizing something like this and to be able to communicate with people from different countries and cultures and hear about the struggles and the ideas that they have about mental health and how we can make it more accessible for students worldwide. I think it was just very inspiring for me. And even though I was kind of hesitant to join, as I had shared with Dr. Joshkun, because I had a lot of workload, but it actually gave me more energy and more motivation in the process. So I just wanted to thank you all for that, for the just amazing energy you created. So yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing. Bulan, any thoughts about what they have been shared?
Well, it's indeed very interesting to listen from our young colleagues. We are bringing together different generations. As we see, our great teacher, Norman Sartorius, is with us. I'm very pleased to see him. And so we can just enjoy this togetherness, I believe. And since you are the moderator, please go ahead and do what is necessary, Eugene.
All right. So thank you, Dr. Norman, for joining us. Usually I'm the loudest, the one that tends to talk more, but today I want to leave it to the students because this is an opportunity for them to ask the questions that they want to know from our respected psychiatrists from across the world. So I'm going to hand it over to Joyce, but again, this is going to be an informal kind of thing. So I think any of you who's here who would like to ask, would like to interact, go ahead. I mean, Joyce, the floor is yours.
Hi, Dr. Sartorius. Very nice to have you here. We are very honored to have you here. I guess, first of all, could you please tell us a bit about your experience in psychiatry?
It'll take a long time if I say everything that happened over the years. But I want to start by congratulating Dr. Joshkun on the idea to do fora like that without really any particular agenda, but just getting people to see each other live and to talk to one another and ask questions and so forth. So it's really a wonderful idea, and I'm sure that Professor Jenkins, who I see here after many years again, with pleasure, and Dr. Gross and others will join me in appreciating this idea. And maybe it could become a regular thing, not only on the World Mental Health Day, but I don't know, every Monday or the first Monday in the month or something like this. So that is my first comment, which I have. The other experience of psychiatry, I started in psychiatry in a country that people really did not expect my psychiatry was going on, because I spent my first days in psychiatry in Yugoslavia. And then later on, I went abroad and spent some time abroad. And so gradually got to know all these other people. And I was delighted when I left Yugoslavia. I met very many people whose book I have read and I admired. And it was quite an experience to see them live. They're much less impressive lives than they are when they write books. But I mean, it was nice to see them and meet them. And then I had an opportunity to join the World Health Organization, which was wonderful in the sense that it allowed me to meet people in different parts of the world, medical students, doctors, psychiatrists, but also the many other people who are really at the center of psychiatry, like the carers, people who look after the mentally ill, their family, and the people with mental illness in different countries as well. And it really convinced me of several things. Convinced me of the fact that the differences between nations are much less than we expect, that being nice is a universal currency. You can be warm and pleasant to anybody in any culture. It's not difficult to overcome cultural barriers if you are respectful of the other and if you feel that people deserve time to say what they want and to be treated in a manner that is equal to yourself. So the years went by, then I joined the World Psychiatric Association, and I was honored to be the president there for a while. And that gave me an opportunity to start a program, which I think I still continue to do, although years have gone by. And that was a world program against stigma of mental illness, because I felt that at the time that the central enemy to all that we are doing is the stigma of mental illness, stigma which we are ourselves, psychiatrists ourselves, are contributing to as well. We are not innocent to that. We speak about schizophrenics instead of saying I have a person who has a diagnosis of schizophrenia. In many other ways, the way in which we organize our services, the way in which we treat our patients. But it was more general, I think, that the work against stigma, to my taste, became the central part of that period while I was at WPA, and subsequently remained with me as an important area of work. More recently, I have two other areas in which I have been engaged for the last 30 years or so. We have been doing courses for young psychiatrists in which we have tried to help them to learn simple skills like how to speak or how to write or how to shake hands or when to shake hands and with whom, or how to present a proposal or how to avoid conflict, or how to say no when asked for things that they cannot do, that the boss asked them to do, and so forth. And these courses have been spread in various countries. We have by now trained about 2,700 psychiatrists in about 60 countries. And I think that's another line that I'm still doing. And the third one, which I think is important as well, is that of thinking about comorbidity, because most of our patients will not only suffer from mental illness, but from more than one illness, from a mental illness and a physical illness. And unfortunately, the fragmentation of medicine into ever smaller disciplines makes it very difficult for people to get the care which they need. People with mental illness die 15 years younger than people who do not have mental illness, but they don't die of the schizophrenia, they die of physical illness, which is very often not properly handled, not properly cared for, not properly done. And unfortunately, while comorbidity is continuously growing, our medicine is splitting into ever smaller specialities. Even within psychiatry, you now have specialists of early interventions, specialists for manic depressive illness, specialists for some other subgroup and I think that the fragmentation of medicine, unfortunately, is a phenomenon that will not go away. Knowledge has become very enormous, and so people they think they cannot cover everything. And also, of course, specialists, very fine specialists, narrow specialists, make much more money than people who are generalists. So it's two very powerful reasons which make me think that people will continue to grow into smaller and smaller specialities. And comorbidity, on the other hand, is becoming the rule rather than the exception. So we have this very difficult problem before us. So this is what I was doing. That's what I am now. And I'm now heading a small non-governmental organization which is located in Geneva. And it deals with those three topics I mentioned, with comorbidity, with stigma, and the education of mainly young psychiatrists, but also other professionals in the field of mental health.
May I come in and say, in addition to what Dr. Sartorius has said, maybe you could also take in the medical students or the other students, which we are aiming to have as the target.
Well, absolutely. My feeling is that in school, the one thing that is really missing, that is in elementary and in secondary school, the thing which is really missing is teaching life skills, how to be with people. Professor Lin, who was one of my teachers many, many years ago, I asked him once, what are you teaching your son? He said, I teach him two things. One, how to be when he is alone, and two, how to be with others. And I think that the skills of being with others and skills of learning how to be with people and how to deal with them is a tremendously important skill. It should be learned in elementary school and in various levels of schooling. But then once we have finished with the life skills, if you wish, teaching, it would be terribly important to add to medical education communication skills, because people do not know how to speak, they do not know how to listen. Listening is a great art, and it is never given an hour of training in our medical curriculum. And I think it's a tremendously important addition to the medical student education is teaching of various skills. Skills, they're professional skills, but also interhuman skills, which are very important. How to console a person, how to show your empathy without being really considered ridiculous, how to do all of these many things which make a good doctor and which make a good people as well. So that's, I would certainly want to have these skills given also to medical students. And of course, what is even more tragic is that psychiatrists who are supposed to be masters of human communication don't have them either. And one of the reasons that psychiatry is faring badly is that psychiatrists do not know how to convince other people that they need money. They don't know how to convince the other people they need better rooms for working, that they need more attention to their patients. They don't know how to do it. And so psychiatry is in a bad way. So I think that that's what motivates me to teach and to speak for the teaching of skills to all of these categories of people.
I can't help but feel that this is going to be a new upcoming project that Bulan is thinking to invite Dr. Norman in future to teach our students within this working group, those skills that you mentioned, because I do think it will be a very, very important skill.
Well, it is a skill that should have, I mean, some people are God-given. God has given them all the skills you can, but most of us have not. And what you will discover when you are getting to my age, you'll discover that you have sometimes spent 30 years of learning something that somebody could have told you in 5 minutes. And that, I think that many of these things are very elementary. They're not complicated anyway, but you have to know that they exist and that you apply them.
All right, Joyce, or any of the other students, would you by any chance have additional question? This is a perfect opportunity to ask.
So, Dr. Sartorius, do you have any advice on a student about what specifically we can do to improve various professional or personal skills?
Sorry, for students about what? I didn't understand.
So stuff we can do to improve our professional or personal skills?
Well, yes, I think that first you should look at successful people and see what they're doing. How do they talk to people? You will notice, for example, that when some of the very popular people come to a group of people and shake their hands, they go along, but they do not fail to look into a person's eyes while they are talking to them, giving him a smile, perhaps, spending a moment showing respect. And looking at other people who are successful, you can learn a great deal. When you see great doctors, you will very often see people with fantastic reputation. Very often it's not because they know so much. They know just about as much as you do, but they know how to use their knowledge. And they also know how to bring the person to speak to them in a manner that they understand what needs to be done. And I think that the first advice I'd give you, look around you to see who is successful and see why they are successful. Some are successful because they're, I don't know, great speakers or great whatever else, but some really use simple skills very successfully. And I think that that's the first source of knowledge which you can have around you. Second, I think it would be nice if at some stage, maybe a student organization could introduce some skill training, maybe an international or national, which would also be quite helpful. And then there are books as well about interhuman skills, which are useful to read. There are books about body language, which you should learn to read. What does it mean if somebody sits with you like this? What does it mean? Is this, can you read that? Do you know what it means? What does it mean if somebody does this all the time? What is the meaning of it? And I think that with a little bit of more attention to that and a little bit less attention to the fat books, you will be a much better doctor, because you will learn how to observe your patient and above all, how to listen to what they have to say, because we are often we've done a study, in fact, some years ago, in which we tried to see how long it takes for a doctor to interrupt the patient. So a patient comes in and says, the doctor says, tell me a little bit about what bothers you. And the person says, well, you know, it has started. And no, he has not spoken more than 20 seconds when the doctor says, yes, but, and interrupts him. And on one occasion, we've done a study in which we've asked the general practitioners to be silent for 2 minutes. That is, as the patient comes in and they ask them what brings them along, they are silent for 2 minutes. They do not, they can say, yes, yes, but no more than that. And then we asked the patients how they felt about the interview and about the examination. And the general answer was, I've never got as much good advice as on this occasion. It was fantastic. And it was nothing more than just listening for 2 minutes. And the skill of listening is immensely important, because listening is not only being silent. Listening is showing by your body language and by your appearance and by everything that you really want to know what that person is saying. And the person who knows that you're listening to him will become incomparably more motivated to tell you things which you otherwise wouldn't hear. So I would think that these are possible answers to your question.
Thank you, Dr. Sartoris. If anyone else wants to ask him any question, go ahead.
That's another skill which you should learn, how to ask questions. Just as important as how to answer questions.
I have a question I could ask, at least on behalf of medical students. Given the current, how medical education is being conducted, if we do have like our students here who are wanting to take up psychiatry as a specialization, what would the best preparation they could do for themselves while they are a medical student, or while they're just starting their internship, to prepare to become a better psychiatrist in the future?
Well, I think that they should have an open mind throughout. Psychiatry is a discipline that is much better practiced when the baseline is a competent medical doctor. So I think that that's one thing that if you concentrate too early on psychiatry, you may be getting less well instruction and learn less well general medicine. So one thing should be definitely that. Secondly, you should try to get to know who psychiatrists are and join them, to talk to them, to see what they're like. Maybe they are mostly so intolerable that you don't want to spend your life working with them. So get to know them, get to know who they are, what they do. Look a little bit also at other features which they have. Today, for example, somebody was telling me that in Turkey, the two most attractive fields of specialization are psychiatry and dermatology for people. And I was, when I talked to people about it, they told me that it was mainly because in both instances, there are fewer night duties. And many students, being women, they have, for better or worse, 100 other obligations to their family, to their friends, to social network building, transmitting culture, looking after the sick, etc. Many things. So having a profession in which you have 8 hours to work, but not necessarily night duties of great trouble, was an attractive proposition. And in fact, what we see also is that the number of women who enter into psychiatry has been increasing continuously. And I think one of the factors has been not only the attraction of psychiatry as a discipline, but attraction of psychiatry because of the way in which psychiatry is practiced. And I think that that was something that also played a role. It's very different to be we have done a survey here in Geneva, and the average in the hospital, university hospital, which is a large hospital, and in other institutions. And we see that a surgeon, surgical, both at all levels, that's not only the senior one, but people of your age and young doctors, etc. They have an average working week of 75 hours, while the psychiatrist is 48 hours. That is including the hours when they have to be there, although they are not supposed to be there, staying over for an extra hour to finish doing something, etc. So it's almost double the amount of hours that they have to spend. And I think I can understand that if you have 10 other duties at home, which males are not sufficiently often doing, that an addition might be also the style of in which psychiatry is practiced. But then you should also try already now to go and be present in departments of psychiatry to see how they are functioning, to see who are the people who work there, to see what the patients are like, but also what the nurses are like and what the doctors are like. And I think that will give you a sense of what the group would be which you will join, and it'll make you better able to decide. But one important advice that I think one should, maybe not now, but what you have later, once you are in psychiatry, you may discover that you don't like it. And it's very helpful then to leave it and to go somewhere else. Because a psychiatrist who doesn't like his discipline is very often not a very good doctor. And I think that is then a harm to the patient as well as to your life, because you're doing something you don't like.
All right. Thank you very much. Please do stay. I'm going to move on to some of the activities we prepared today, but for those who are around, just please stay. As again, we do want this to be as informal as possible. So I have a rough idea of what I'm going to do for the next 2 hours, but it's not scripted. I don't prepare any of the speeches. I'm just going to go with the flow. Next up, that we actually have Ramin and his band has prepared a little cover song, 3 songs, if I'm not mistaken, right, Ramin? And he wants to share it to us. Essentially, it's his interpretation or his take about psychiatry or about mental health in some of the famous songs. And I think he done the recording. Ramin, over to you.
Mr. Cox, just to say, I apologize. I have to leave a little bit later. So forgive me for this. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you very much again to actually being part of us, joining us. Actually, we do really appreciate, and a lot of the things that you shared with was very, very insightful. Off the back channels, I'm actually getting a lot of messages saying that they were learning a lot and they found it very inspirational. Okay, Ramin, over to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Eugene, and thank you so much, Dr. Sartorius, for the very insightful pieces of advice. I think before I go on to my segment, I think I just like to comment on what you mentioned about being open-minded. I think that is very important because we are first going to be general doctors, and we have to be good doctors before we can actually, get into the field of psychiatry in the first place. So I think that is a very important takeaway message that I got. So yeah, all right. So this next segment that my band and I have prepared, actually just a couple of friends and I, we have, it's called Psychiatry in Music. So some of the, as some of you may know, there are some popular music artists who actually come up with lyrics for their song, or they design their songs in relation to things that they may be going through. And oftentimes, you may find that these artists are actually people who suffer from some form of mental illness. In fact, I think there was a study published in 2017 which states that musicians are up to 33% more likely to develop depression in itself. So yeah, I think it's something very interesting because I am passionate in music as well. So it's something that caught my eye and something that I wanted to share with everyone. So what we'll do is we'll play the video, which consists of 3 songs, and we'll have a discussion shortly after about maybe some of the other songs that people can you can all think of, or about the songs that we cover in the first place. And disclaimer before I share my screen: the 3 of us in the video are none of us in the video are professional musicians, so we apologize for if the music is below par, but it's just for fun anyway. All right, so just let me share my screen. Right, hi everyone. We are medical students from Malaysia. I'm Ramin, this is Ali, and this is Bernie. Right, say hi guys. Right, and today what we've got for you guys is music and psychiatry. Now, when we listen to music, there are a lot of songs that have deeper meaning, whether it be in their lyrics or in the musical tonality of it. So we're going to explore a couple of songs, and we hope you enjoy it in the process. Right. This song is In the End by Linkin Park. Now, some of you might remember the lead vocalist was Chester Bennington, who had suffered from depression and unfortunately took his own life. The beauty of this song is that it can be interpreted in 2 ways. I myself choose to look at the more positive interpretation, which is whatever negative happens in your life, it doesn't matter. The only thing that truly matters is your effort, your decisions, and you. It starts with one thing, I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind, I designed this rhyme to explain in due time. All I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. The clock takes life away, it's so unreal. Take a look out below. Watch the time go right out the window. Trying to hold on to it, didn't even know I wasted it all just to watch you go. I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time I strived so hard and got so cold. But in the end, it didn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. One thing, I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind, I designed this rhyme to remind myself how I tried so hard. In spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, remembering all the times you fought with me. I'm surprised it got so. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore. Not that you knew me back then, but it all comes back to me in the end. I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of the time I tried so hard and got so far. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. I can't move on and lose it all. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. So the next song we have is Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. This song actually talks about the dangers of social stigma and having a person being socially isolated from people. And even though they want to be with others, they want to interact with others, they are unable to because of their impairment. And to add insult to injury, there's the social stigma that's preventing them from interacting with others. So, enjoy. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so this next song is True Colors, which the song itself clearly explains that if you have mental illness, there shouldn't be a stigma around it. You shouldn't have to hide it. You shouldn't have to be afraid of what others would think about it. I think it's a really beautiful song. Wouldn't you say, Ali?
Yeah, it is. Just a reminder to everyone that we should be ourselves.
You with those sad eyes, don't be discouraged or realize it's hard to take courage in this world full of people. You can lose sight of it all. The darkness inside you makes you feel so small. True colors.
All right. Yeah, that was our performance. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share after like watching that?
Great, Graham. Really, it's great.
I'd like to say something. It's the National Institute of Mental Health in Bangalore, India, where the staff have jointly, with some amateur singers, released this morning the Anthem of Psychiatry. It's a wonderful song which is sung by psychiatrists of the Institute, 40 of them. And Professor John, who is the chair of the academic group, would be delighted to make it available to you on YouTube. It will also be on YouTube. So it's a direct contribution. Psychiatrists sometimes can even sing.
Yeah, I think it's a part of human nature that we all can we need to accept that we shouldn't compartmentalize, like how we shouldn't compartmentalize psychiatry and all the other fields of medicine. I think the same thing applies to like human life. We have our own interests, like you can be interested in psychiatry and music, and you can be interested in technology and psychiatry, and you can be interested in photography, and I think I think people can sing and be a good medical doctor as well. Yeah, but yeah, I think the message that we wanted to sort of convey with this is that I think there's a lot of ways that people tend to express their what they're going through, and I think music happens to be one of the ways. In fact, for me personally, I find it very therapeutic when I express my emotions through music. So I think it's just something interesting to me. It's something I'm passionate about.
Maybe we could hear a bit from the other medical students about what they think and all this.
Ramin, I just want to say thank you to you and your friends, because like I texted you privately also, but I don't know if anyone just like saw my face while you guys were playing. Like the music just took me places. I'm a very firm believer of the healing power of art. I personally find a lot of healing in writing for myself throughout my own mental health journey. And just like music is also, it just like covers your scars, or I don't know, it's just how gives you that sort of revitalizing energy to your soul, to just so that you can gain the power to look through a window that is more illuminated than maybe perhaps you were looking through a darker window. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that. I think it was an amazing performance. And I definitely agree, we should not compartmentalize the experience of being human. And not that we shouldn't, I think we can't, if we really want to heal people, because healing is a process of wholeness. And we really have to consider people with their, like physical health, with their, psychological health, and also their social health. So thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And I'm really glad that you all are able to enjoy this as well. Yeah, this was a group effort, the three of us. And I think we just came together on Friday night because we were busy throughout the rest of the week. And we were just like, okay, let's just practice one time and let's try to record it. And yeah, I think there were some challenges, but we sort of pulled through. And yeah, I'm really glad that you enjoy it.
I do have one question though. The music you choose is of a particular, shall I say, older generation? Any reason behind that? I try not to say that it's my generation kind of thing, but yeah, it's any particular inspiration that you choose, to choose something from the early 2000s.
Yeah, I think this is actually the music that I listened to growing up. So like even like True Colors, I think my mom would play it on the radio and stuff. So that was something part of my experience. But the other two songs, especially like Boulevard of Broken Dreams and In the End, I think it was something that I related to even as a teen, like, when I was in that school going age. And something that I don't know, I sort of, I think there's many studies that shows that we tend to achieve this rigidity in our music taste after a certain age. I think it's around 30 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think I seem to have achieved some sort of rigidity in terms of the music. I tend to prefer like the music that I listened to growing up, where it's very instrumental and it's there's the guitars, there's the drums, and yeah, I think the music itself, the lyrics is one thing, but the music itself, there's a tonality to it, like, to keep it, in simple terms, like there's a major chord which sounds very happy, and then there's a minor chord which sounds a bit sad. And then when you play it in a certain sequence, it can sound hopeful, or it can sound very full of despair. So I think the music itself sort of spoke to me in that sense. And I think in that way, the music on its own, without the lyrics, it's some sort of a universal language. Yes, Prof.
May I say a few things, Eugene? Ramin, it was great indeed. I can't find a proper word to express my feelings. I'm sure it will be a hit on YouTube. You are going to make our video just knocked several times. They will take out this piece and make it a big, what's it called, TT or something like that, whatever it is. By the way, we have Dr. Afzal joined to us. We have Rachel, we have Larry, we have others, but unfortunately we couldn't get the introduction part of David Barron. He probably had some problems with logging in. He says he tried 7 times with both addresses. It continues to say, I'm locked out. I believe when I tried to log in, he would say a few good things about all of us. And please inform our distinguished guests and our students. I was very much looking forward to this session and briefly discussing the fine work we are all doing with SEED as a critical component of our newly organized section activities. For the time being, he says, there isn't anything else he can do, but he is with us. I'm glad to be able to convey his message. Again, giving it back to you, Eugene, please. There are very important guests we have among us, including our dear students.
Yeah, so if we were to just quickly move on a bit, Ingrid, I think it's your turn up to lead the floor for our 2 distinguished guests, Dr. Afzal and Dr. Rachel. I leave it to you.
Okay, so first we have Dr. Afzal Javed. Dr. Javed, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. Good morning and assalamu alaikum.
Good morning. Wa alaikum assalam. So you are the consultant psychiatrist and honorary associate clinical professor at Warwick Medical School and University of Warwick, UK. And you have also served as the president of the World Psychiatric Association. So I just want to jump in with the questions because I have very interesting questions for you that I'm very curious about, if that's okay for you.
Yes, by all means, but let me first thank Professor Bulent Koskan, and I'm really pleased that he has been able to get very high expertise like Professor Sartorius, Professor Rachel Jenkins. I mean, this in fact shows the strength of our association, and more importantly, the dedication of our senior people to be involved in discussion with our younger generation. So thank you to Professor Rachel Jenkins, David Barron, Norman Sartorius, and Bulent Koskan.
So, Dr. Javid, in your online biography, you mentioned that you first got interested in psychiatry as a medical student, despite the lack of exposure you had and the negative societal perceptions regarding the field at the time. I imagine we have aspiring mental health providers viewing us today, and perhaps they are facing the same sort of obstacles and struggles in their journey. So could you take us back to the beginning of your story by sharing with us what inspired young Afzal to challenge the status quo, and perhaps share any advice you have for aspiring psychiatrists and mental health providers?
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for asking this question, which really provides a big reflection to me whenever I think that why did I come to this field? You know that the generation I belong to, that was the time, the last century, the last half of the last century, actually the psychiatry was mainly limited to asylums, big mental hospitals. And that was the time, 70s, 80s, when the movement for community psychiatry was coming up. But at that time, that movement was generally limited to the Western world or to the developed world. Mm-hmm. We still continued having a very limited exposure, specifically for the medical students to psychiatry, because I still remember that when I was a medical student, my exposure was just one day visit to a mental hospital, which was part of like a sort of an amusement for all of us. And this generation, especially you people, are very privileged that psychiatry has come forward in many ways. So that was the time. And then I had also had another privilege that I was born in a family where we had some people who were already doing psychiatry. So that was a sort of an added attraction to me. And I was also, from my medical student days, I was involved in the working of a rehab unit for mentally ill, that is Fountain House, Lahore, which was established in early 60s. So all these factors attracted me towards this specialty. And then, as this was a very challenging field, and I thought that there will be many of my classmates, my friends, who will join medicine, who will join surgery. Nobody will join this specialty. So I took it as a challenge. At the same time, as my interest, while I was just working in different capacities with some people who are already involved in the working for the mentally ill. And I honestly don't feel any regrets.
So what would be like the one advice you would share for the mental health providers today, like the aspiring mental health providers today, heading on to their own journey? Like one takeaway you would have from your own experience?
I think now the time has come that we have to prove and we have to believe that no health without mental health, number one. And number two, this century is seeing a sort of a new pattern of the illnesses, new pattern of the presentation of psychiatric problems. The last century, we were just keeping our patients in asylums, in big hospitals, just like out of sight, out of mind. But now the situation is changed. Now we are seeing more people in the community. We are not seeing that many people who are danger to society. On the other hand, there is a sort of a number of patients who are becoming danger to themselves through neglect or through some of the other psychosocial stresses. So this is the big change that we have to really work to find out how can we come to the expectations for this changing pattern of the illnesses. That is number one. And number two, if you compare what was happening 50 years ago, now we have got more scientific evidences about the mental illnesses, about epidemiology, about the causes, about the etiology. And that is becoming more interesting because our medical students are students of science.
Yeah.
The best way to convince them is that, look, psychiatry is a science. But at the same time, psychiatry also looks at many other aspects of human being, of personal interaction, social interaction. So this really becomes a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That you are not dealing with a sort of, you know that pneumonia is caused by this organism or bacteria.
Yeah.
You treat it. Now here, we are really struggling to find out what is the cause and what are the factors that could contribute. So I feel this is a plus point for psychiatry, although many consider it a negative point, but I always consider it a challenging field. And our younger generation is more capable of dealing with the challenges.
Thank you. So my next question is about your particular interest. So you're mostly known for your work in transcultural psychiatry and emphasizing the importance of transcultural understanding in mental health. So as you started to talk about the new generation and the differences, would you also say the new generation of providers are luckier because we have more exposure and access to different cultures or different human experiences, especially through social media? So how does the future of transcultural psychiatry look for you in this sense?
I think you are absolutely right. Our younger generations are well equipped.
Mm-hmm.
They know what is happening in the world. And this is a global village. Everybody knows what is happening even in the remote part of the world. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the mental health, I think this is a unique opportunity for all of us that through the social media and through the current Google and all these facilities, we are able to know how culture and traditions and heritage affects the mental well-being of people. And that is also a very interesting point because if you are seeing, and I think probably there is no country in the world where you can't find so many sort of nationalities, either living, asylums, migration, or as an employees. And all of us now see a number of patients coming from different cultures. So that is a moving force that we have to learn about some of these cultural norms and the idioms of expression of those people when they are faced with stress. Many people have documented this. For example, there are many cultures where there is no word equivalent to depression. Mm. But people there do express the depression in many ways, whether this is somatic, whether this is psychological. So I strongly feel that this general exposure of transcultural psychiatry is actually very, very helpful. You take the example of any country, you will always find different nationalities, and our trainees are now getting more exposure to meet, to see, and to explore how things are presented, how we should communicate them, and how should we pass on our messages to them. So hats off to the social media and to the current sort of developments.
Thank you so much. I think we have a oh no, we don't have a question, sir. I thought we had a message in the chat. Yeah, do we have any questions?
No, Idil, may I just remind you that David Barron with his phone is online after finishing with our chat with Afzal Javid. We may go to him before Rachel. We have been keeping Rachel waiting a long time, I know, but David has hardly joined us. After Afzal, please let him say a few words.
I think probably because of the time limitations, I would request that if we go to David and to Rachel, because both of them are highly expertise in terms of their interaction with different cultures, with different aspects of psychiatry. But I will be actually here to listen to their talks as well. And you can come back to me anytime.
Okay, then. Thank you so much, Dr. Jod. It was really nice to talk to you, and it was an honor to have you. So then we can move on to Dr. David, if he's here. Oh, yeah, he's here. Dr. Baron, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, welcome.
Well, it's only taken me 20 minutes. I logged on. I could hear you, but I guess my good friend Dr. Gross said you couldn't see me, so I logged off and tried logging back on again, and it completely locked me out. So I was able to get on my cell phone to get this, but so I want to apologize because this is an important meeting. But very quickly, and I want to hear Rachel and Helen's comments as well. I just want to thank all of our distinguished and royal guests. According to to Bulan, we do have royalty on the call. And it's clear that the future of effective and efficient delivery of comprehensive medical care really lies in interdisciplinary, interprofessional, collaborative models. To achieve optimal quality of life for our patients moving forward in a post-COVID world, integrated collaboration will be the key. But the real future of medical care lies in our most important asset, and that's our medical students. And I just can't thank Bulan enough for all the work he's put in to bringing students in and really training the next generation, the people who will really make a difference moving forward in mental health. Clearly, medical education is the ultimate key to addressing the challenges, not only now, but yet to come, to really address kind of world health and well-being, particularly in the LMICs, as Professor Diva has mentioned. And I just look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations that are being presented and the discussion. And I can just share with all of the students on the line, every member of this call, all of our senior members who are on here, Professor Sartorius, Professor Javid, Professor Herman, Professor Diva, all of them have really committed themselves to medical education. I'm just thrilled that in our section of medicine, psychiatry, and primary care, we've been able to develop under Bulan's leadership this seed, which he's done a phenomenal job with. And we're really looking at a number of projects integrating physical health and physical health care delivery in a primary care setting with social psychiatry. And I think working together, we'll do a much better job of addressing all the challenges that will face us, not only in the days and months, but weeks and years to come. So thank you all very much. And let me please turn it back over to Rachel and the rest of the panel, and then I'm looking forward to discussion. And again, I apologize for all the difficulty logging on.
No need for apologies. We're just very happy to have you. It's the process that counts. So if it brought you here, it was right. So thank you so much. Dr. Jenkins, are you ready? Or is there anyone who would like to, add on to what Dr. Baron has just mentioned? To just no? Okay, so, yeah.
Professor Koskan, if I can just use this opportunity to tell our medical students that promoting psychiatry as a medical profession or a medical career is one of the top priorities of WPA's current action plan. And we have set up an action plan group, and we are privileged that Professor Koskan is also supporting that group. And we are just promoting and doing some seminars, webinars in different schools to tell people that why psychiatry is important. And we have just put few slogans. For example, top 5 reasons to choose psychiatry. And we tell the medical students, number 1, psychiatry is intellectually stimulating medical specialty. Number 2, psychiatry gives the opportunity to really get to know the patients and their families and carers. Number 3, the science of psychiatry is evolving rapidly with fascinating clinic and research opportunities. Number 4, psychiatrists are increasingly expected to use their medical skills to monitor and manage physical illnesses. So we are doctors, but we are well equipped understanding psychology, sociology, and anthropology. And last but not the least, psychiatry is full of passion, creativity, thoughtfulness, and we provide an ideal environment to train and teach our medical students to develop their special interest in a number of areas. So I would request Professor Koskan that to highlight these points while we are promoting our specialty among the future generation specialists. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Dr. Zoid, once again. So Dr. Jenkins, are you ready?
Yes, hello everybody. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, Dr. Jenkins. It's so nice to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, all well here, thank you. And I managed to grab an apple because it's so early in the morning. And I thought my mental health would be improved if my blood sugar was higher. Because I'm away from home at the moment. I wanted to start by, again, congratulating Bülent Koskan and all of you students for putting this on. I think it's a wonderful idea. And I agree with Norman that we should do this more often. It's very nice to see old friends as well as make new ones. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
We thank you.
I think I was asked to talk a bit about my trajectory into and sort of through psychiatry. Yeah. So I think it's been a collection of accidents, really. But I went as a medical student at the end of my first year to work in Tanzania in a research institute, the Institute of Malaria and Vector-Borne Diseases, and loved it. It was up in the rainforest in the Usambara Mountains. So it was the most extraordinary experience for about 3 or 4 months. And I had the wonderful opportunity to meet all sorts of exciting scientists as well, and visiting professors from various tropical institutes from around the world. And I came back firmly convinced that I wanted to do tropical medicine. But then at the end after I graduated in medicine, I married and a lawyer who said he couldn't work in Scotland, let alone in Africa. So I decided that, well, all right, well, I'll be a GP. And I set off to organize my own GP training course because they'd only just started then and they weren't very good. And I decided that GPs needed to know about psychiatry, pediatrics, and geriatrics. And the first job that came up was psychiatry. And I ended up at the Maudsley and found myself on the registrar rotation and really never thought of leaving. It was just wonderful. Psychiatry is so interesting. I can't tell you. It's completely gripping. I have never regretted it for one moment. And within psychiatry, there's so many different things you can do, get interested in. So I think psychiatry is just a wonderful career and you might all consider it. But if you're not going to be a psychiatrist, then I would say that primary care is a very honourable profession, very honourable place to be, a very important place to be. And I'll say a bit more about that as well.
It feels so good to hear you say that because I currently work as a general practitioner.
Well, it's very important. And I'm going to say quite a lot more. But anyway, I was also asked about how I came to do this sort of rather public health role in psychiatry.
Yeah, because when I first heard you were both a psychiatrist and an epidemiologist, I initially assumed you went to the psychiatry route first and then you got interested in public health. But now the story you tell is actually public health was sort of your first love.
It was, public health certainly. But then at the Maudsley, I was kind of hijacked by Professor Michael Shepherd to join his research unit. which was called the General Practice Research Unit. And he really pioneered mental health research in primary care. And it's still well worth reading the publications that came out of that unit. And so I got to work with Professor Anthony Mann, and we did 2 epidemiological studies together, one on primary care, the Stratford study, which showed just how long these illnesses last in primary care, depression, anxiety, what the long-term trajectory is. And the other was this rather famous or infamous US-UK study of the care of the elderly, which had been running before I joined it. But at the stage that I joined, it was looking at the institutional care of the elderly between London and New York. So that was my first introduction, really, apart from my time in Tanzania, to the cultural differences between London and New York, which I may say were enormous. And the care was very different. So then I became a consultant at Barts for 3 years. And I think that was what started to get me thinking about populations as opposed to either the patient in front of you or the hypothesis in front of you if you were doing research. But I started to think about that Barts had to look after the population of Hackney and the City of London. And so I perforce had to think in those terms. And I got to know my public health colleagues and my primary care colleagues, and also to travel around and look at the rich areas and the poor areas, which kind of chimes in with mental health in an unequal world at the moment. And after 3 years there, I was asked to go and join our Ministry of Health, the Department of Health, principally to look after the research program to begin with. But as an afterthought, they also gave me mental health in primary care and old age care to look after. But gradually my remit expanded and my boss retired. And so I then had to look after the whole of mental health policy, which again lifted my thinking from the local area to the national, and trying to think, what is it that governments must do to facilitate the services? So I started to think of the services as a bit like a plumbing diagram with blockages, and it's the job of governments to unpick these blockages, to get everything flowing as well as it can, and to get the resources used as well as they possibly can, so that we're meeting overall population needs, as it were, which is a sort of governmental responsibility, if you like. So it's kind of tall order. And I had to learn on the job. There was no training for it, absolutely no training. So we learned, and I had some wonderful colleagues around me. And also I wanted to know what other countries did. And it's something the UK is not very good at asking, but I was very keen to know how other countries did it. And so I found somebody who introduced me to WHO and to wonderful, inspirational people like Norman Sartorius. And so that was how I got to know and gradually be drawn in to some of the activities that WHO were doing as well. So that was an enormous help to me. And after about 10 years, I was seconded out of the Ministry of Health to direct the WHO Collaborating Centre at the Institute of Psychiatry. So in a sense, I went back home, back to the Institute, but developed a work programme working with low and middle income countries which was a mixture of policy support, research and training, really in a kind of audit cycle, if you like, trying to get the research to inform the policy, and the training would fall out of the policy as one of the top priorities. Now you've asked me if I had to mention one priority, what would it be? And
it's one significant thing, you had learned along this journey.
Sorry?
So like because you have just told quite the story, you have quite the journey. I can't like have my mind wrapped around this. So why what would be the one significant thing that you have learned along the way that you would like to share us?
I think it's the importance of primary care.
Yeah.
Would be my top take-home message today, is the fundamental importance of primary care. That primary care is in the front line for all of us. And Norman mentioned the enormous comorbidity. I would say know your epidemiology. Have a look at all the epidemiological studies, and you'll see not only how common mental illness is, but also how great the comorbidity is with physical illnesses. And it's the very difficult task in primary care to disentangle the physical, the psychological, and the social. And so we all have to think kind of multi-axially whenever we have a patient in front of us. When I was a student, we were taught one patient, one diagnosis. And this absolutely isn't true. It took me quite a while to realize this is completely erroneous. And people have a physical side, a psychological side, and all the multiplicity of the social aspects as well. So we all have to think biopsychosocially, and we need to be training our students to do biopsychosocial assessments, biopsychosocial diagnoses, biopsychosocial management plans. And every doctor in whatever kind of clinic they're in really ought to be operating biopsychosocially. So I think this would be my mantra, but know the epidemiology so that one knows just how common the different disorders are, how much the comorbidity they have, and what the risk factors are, because the risk factors lead you to plans for prevention, health promotion and prevention.
If we were to talk about a bit of how like the future of mental health services look, if you recall in a previous session we were together regarding brain drain, we had discussed how like the outflow of psychiatrists and other healthcare providers from low and middle income countries impacted the availability of mental health services in these countries. But other than this, like what other global issues we have today do you think will shape the future of mental health services, as in how will these issues impact the need and availability of services?
Just on the brain drain issue to begin with, I think that Norman was absolutely right when he talked about the extreme specialization that is now happening. And the problem is that every time we create a new specialist, we create a demand for more doctors, because it's like every area in the world, in the country, has to have some of those specialists as well. So we keep ramping up the numbers of doctors that we need. And it's only the rich countries that can afford them. And so the rich countries act as this enormous magnet, feeling that they need more and more doctors. They're not training enough medical students. So they draw from low and middle income countries. And this it's a major, major problem. And it's very hard to see how to reverse it. And I would say the UK is the worst offender. And looking at our new registrations of doctors, half are from other countries. So it's clear the UK needs to double the number of medical students it's training. And it isn't because it thinks it can't afford it. But of course, it can and it should. Other rich countries also draw in, but not to the extent that the UK does. I think the OECD average is 20% of its doctors come from other countries. The UK, it's 30%. So that's enough of brain drain. But you asked me what else I think will impact on services. I think clearly the problems of climate change and biodiversity loss are going to have an enormous impact on all of us. And it behoves us all to kind of learn about it, think about it, and we all have to modify our behavior. And I think we'll be needing to do many more of these Zoom meetings and not reduce our carbon footprints and stop flying around the world, which is what we've done until now. So yes, and I think in terms of our own mental health journey, or in terms of mine anyway, I've been trying to do, as I'm now kind of semi-retired, do quite a bit on biodiversity. And so I'm also monitoring some nest boxes for pied flycatchers, which migrate between West Africa and the west of the UK every year. And so I visit these flycatchers every May and June and monitor how many babies they have, how well the babies grow, and I put rings on them so I'll recognize them next year. And so I feel this is my small contribution to monitoring biodiversity. But I would say the climate change is going to have a massive impact on migration pressures to more conducive environments. The rich will leave first, so the populations left behind will have even fewer doctors than they have now, and nurses. So I think we all have a collective responsibility to do our bit for climate change. And the other thing I would say was doctors set a wonderful example to the world some decades ago about smoking. When doctors stop smoking, everybody else stops smoking as well. So I think we have a role to play in stepping up to our responsibilities about climate change and biodiversity loss.
Thank you so much. Dr. Joshkun wants to add something. He just let me know. Dr. Joshkun?
Yeah, other than thanking all our distinguished guests, our recent speaker, Rachel, underlines so many important things. I had a similar journey with her. I worked at the Ministry of Health as well, and I know the difficulties one faces. I would also like to thank Rachel for bringing in different issues like critical thinking and working with other areas as well. She does this without giving a lecture at a lesson. She does this just doing that. A good teacher is always an example, and she is one of them, similar to the other distinguished friends of ours which are here. I want to keep silent now and thank everybody for being here. Thanks.
Yes, Dr. Javed. Thank you, Dr. Joshkun. You're muted. I can't hear you, Dr. Javed.
Okay. May I just take this opportunity to congratulate and thank Professor Rachel Jenkins. And I mean, she is one of those leading people that we always look at, who has really made a change in the practice of psychiatry. May I just ask Professor Rachel Jenkins an advice? Because now the time has come that we have to move away from that traditional teaching and training of medical students, which we were using during the last century. And one important aspect is public mental health, because I personally believe that mental health should be practiced as public mental health. So would Professor Jenkins be kind to advise us how we can make some changes in the curriculum for undergraduate psychiatry so that our medical students take this message right from the time when they are having this undergraduate education or exposure?
Oh, thank you, Afzal. But yes, lovely question. I agree with you. I think it's very important that we should try and take a good look at the curriculum. I think at the moment, from what I've seen of curriculum and how I remember it, most of it is focused on the individual. It's focused on individual assessment, diagnosis, management, the individual disorders. There isn't very much epidemiology in there. There isn't an orientation to public mental health, the importance of the other settings, prisons, schools, workplaces, all the other places where people can get ill or where health can be promoted. So I would put plenty in on that. I don't think our students are taught about the Sustainable Development Goals and what we should be doing to achieve that. I don't think they're given a sort of governmental perspective, a policy perspective. Often people go through their careers not actually knowing what mental health policy is for their country and what it does. And we can't expect it to be implemented if we're not teaching people about it. I think we need more human rights in the curriculum, for sure. Yes. I could send you a list, Afzal.
No, that will be very helpful, because from the WPA's perspective, we really want to emphasize how should we change our practices. So that will be very helpful, and I will remind you about this kind of.
Lovely.
Thank you so much for the question, Dr. Jowett, and thank you so much for the answer, Dr. Jenkins.
Can I just, since I'm going to talk later, but just to answer this question, what do we do about the curriculum? Actually, I will address it later, but I'll tell you now anyway. Actually, the curriculum, I think Professor Sartorius may or may not remember this. He told me a long time ago when I was a young psychiatrist, changing curriculums is like changing graveyards. He told this a long time ago, and I agree with him. Very difficult to change curriculum, but the problem is that the curriculum are actually in place because of the faculty, not because of the department. The faculty decides whether your surgical curriculum will have 16 hours or 64 weeks or 12 weeks, or psychiatry will have 2 weeks or 20 weeks. Faculty decides. But what you do inside the curriculum is very much dependent on the psychiatrist. Now, what's happened is that in most medical schools that I know of, including the developed countries and the developing countries, the content of the curriculum is just following what it did before, in the days when chlorpromazine was just coming in. So I think that the curriculum can be changed quite easily, and I'll show you later on how we changed it in my country, how we changed it. Because the curriculum, once the faculty decides you get 12 weeks, that's it. They don't care what you teach in the 12 weeks. They don't care what you teach in the 12 weeks. But the psychiatrist decides. If the psychiatrist is very traditional, he'll just follow what they did last year and the year before. That's why most of our teaching is stuck on psychosis, which altogether works out to be less than 10% of all mental illnesses. Now, I think Professor Jenkins mentioned just now about how to change the content of the curriculum, about talking about policy, talking about climate change, and so on. So well, I fully agree. But we haven't gone into primary care psychiatry. I actually brought up this question at a previous webinar that Professor Koskun organized. And I said, in the Western countries, in the developed countries, are they teaching primary care psychiatry 70% of the time and psychosis, 20, 30% of the time? They said, no, they're still going on teaching psychosis. So that part can be changed. It can be changed very easily if psychiatry is changing. Thank you very much.
Right, so I'm just gonna jump in quickly.
Please.
Because we do have a limited time and we want to hear a lot from everyone here. I actually had to jump in here because thank you, Dr. Rachel, for sharing it. I think that has been very insightful, especially your journey from going in from a GP and all your other works in the future and all this. I think that would have been very inspiring. And I could see that Kina was a bit in a fangirl mood. You could see she was glowing whenever she was asking those questions. She thoroughly enjoyed. I think that would be the same. I would say that would be the same for all of us. We actually have a pleasure of having Dr. Ingrid from the president of the World Federations for Mental Health, who just joined us. I think I just pronounced the name wrongly. World Federation of Mental Health. Yeah. So would Dr. Ingrid like to say a few words, because we did ask you to come in to have a quick say and about today's World Mental Health Day and so on and so forth?
Yes, hello, good morning everyone, and good morning, Bulens. It's nice to see you physically, but virtually as well. Good to be. I'm sorry I could only join a bit later because, as you can imagine, it's a very busy day for us. And I'm sadly going to have to leave probably within about 30 minutes or so. But I wanted to be here. So it's really great to be here. I bring you greetings from the World Federation for Mental Health on this amazing day where we're going to raise much needed awareness. So thank you so much for discussing the curriculum and how that needs to change if we're wanting to narrow those treatment gaps, if we're wanting to deal with issues of countries who still don't have mental health policies and legislation. We need to talk about the great investment in mental health. We know this was a discussion last year and it's carrying through this year. So, for us, this is an important day to bring all our voices together and put the spotlight on the inequalities that limit people from accessing mental health care. And I want to congratulate you for looking at the curriculum, because I think psychiatry and how we operate needs to change. We need to have a biopsychosocial approach to how we provide services and, focusing on recovery-orientated, person-centered interventions. I heard someone say, if you're looking at psychosis, it's a very small percentage of the whole spectrum that we're looking at. So we've taken on a mammoth task this year, looking at mental health in an unequal world, because obviously we know there are multiple risk factors that have been made much worse because of COVID-19. And now we need to start talking about how do we build bridges and ensure that we put protective measures in place. So just well done. And I believe together we can make a difference. So it's great to be here, and thanks for the opportunity again.
All right, thank you very much. Bulan, do you want to say anything with regards to that? Oh.
Well, we are very pleased indeed to have the support of World Federation for Mental Health, especially Ingrid being among us, gives us great honor, of course. In addition to the distinguished other friends we have, I'm sure, as I had suggested earlier at the very beginning of this meeting, we should have periodical similar meetings. Dr. Sartorius also suggested this. We'll think about it with the invaluable guests of this meeting.
All right. And now I would actually like to invite Dr. Helen Hermann. I think we told you that we were going to ask you to come in on board a bit earlier, but the discussions has been ongoing and we have gone a bit overboard with timing. So without taking too much time, I'm just going to jump straight in. So today is supposed to be an informal session. We do have a lot of medical students tuning in, and we do have some here, and they would very like to hear about your experience in psychiatry, your journey in mental health and in psychiatry itself. Perhaps you could start by giving a very brief run through some of the distinguished points in your life, in your career as a psychiatrist.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ko, and to Professor Brilliant and all colleagues. I'm delighted to be here and appreciate the invitation. And I've just had the opportunity to listen to Rachel and Ingrid and Dr. Deva. I'm delighted to have that opportunity, and several of, and Afzal, of course, and the students. Well, listening to Rachel, I think the commonality is joint background in public health and mental health. In fact, I began in public health, having trained in medicine in Melbourne and studied public health in the UK, in fact, in Oxford. And in those days, we in Australia could come to the UK and be registered for life and continue working. But I went back home to Melbourne and trained in psychiatry there. So it took me 10 years after graduation to move into psychiatry. And I think following Rachel's comments, it was an inspired move. And it was, in my case, it was brought on by working in public health and understanding that what were the reasons that people with psychosis died young. or died before others. And was it some kind of inbuilt error of metabolism or genetics, or was it other factors? And I think understanding that it is probably a result of the social circumstances of their lives that predominantly is the reason that people with psychosis and other forms of mental disorders die early. And of course, we're seeing that now in the unequal world that's being, the inequity being worsened through the times of the pandemic, or in all the countries that we're speaking from. And as time went on, I also became interested in epidemiology, and particularly in the errors that can creep in when people study epidemiology and study the people that they're familiar with rather than the whole population. So the idea that mental illness goes on forever is, of course, true for some people, but not for others. And we've been stuck with this idea because of the early studies in the asylums, and we still haven't shaken it right off. But one of the things that interests me a lot is studying mental disorders across the life course and considering the importance of early intervention. And that, as Rachel and Dr. Kina and others talked about, primary health care, that's what brings us together with work in primary health care. Like the rest of, whether it's physical illness or mental illness, getting in early and trying to thereby influence the course of disorder and limit the disabilities that are associated with the conditions. So that's been some of the things that have really affected my practice in life. And I had the experience of working for some period with the World Health Organization in the Western Pacific region. So visiting many places there, from China south to Samoa. And the fact that governments everywhere struggle with the same things, and that it's an exception that someone with a psychosis has access to care. If you look at the world overall, most people living with a psychosis don't have access to care, let alone people living with anxiety and depression. And seeing people, whether it be in Indonesia or in other parts of Asia or Africa, who in fact need to be restrained by their own families or in other places outside care, is a very confronting experience. And it's an experience that confronts people working in primary health care, as well as the few mental health specialists that there may be around. So access to rights-based care, finding ways to provide high quality care that limits the need for coercion to the emergency situation, has been a preoccupation as I worked before AFSAL as the president of the World Psychiatric Association, and had the great pleasure of working with AFSAL there. And we have continued together some work on considering how to provide this rights-based care, working with our member societies. And so I might pause there, and very pleased to.
Thank you actually for the great sharing. So some of our students here are from LAMIC countries. If they, in the future, if they were going to pursue psychiatry, or if they want to advocate for mental health, so on, what based on your experience, what would be your advice to them if they were to go down that route, if they were to go down that same direction, especially for LAMIC countries where resources are limited, the platforms for voicing out could be limited to, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, I think that many people in low and middle income countries are heroes. And that's very important. On the other hand, we need to avoid burnout. We need to avoid people feeling the need to leave, to have a reasonable opportunity to pursue their career and raise their families. And the part of the answer, as it is in high-income countries, is partnerships, that learning who to work with and how to work with others. I think an important factor in our curriculum, or not even in our curriculum, but just in the process of our training, is that we learn to be special. We learn that nobody can tell us what to do. But that also cuts us off from communicating with others, learning from others, working with others in some instances. And it takes all of us, I believe, or many of us, a long time to really let that go. And the important partnerships are with people with lived experience, with the people with living with psychosis, depression, anxiety, and their families. And in WPA, we've worked extensively with advice from Ingrid and others in the World Federation for Mental Health. And we're looking to work closely with them as the years go past. But working together with these groups and finding solutions together, as we've tried to do with the work on limiting coercion in mental health care. So I think clearly it's that's a way to work. It's not an easy solution because we're not so far trained or expected to do that. But that partnership also with policymakers, with working in the community to support community actors to strengthen the community responses to mental health are where we're likely to have the most impact. And being the experts who can train others and support others in their work.
Yeah, I do agree that the future directions kind of move away from that. The psychiatrist's role is no longer see patients, but also be someone who could train the community up to address some of these issues, these very pressing issues that's still ongoing and evolving. All right, I would leave it open to the floor. Anyone has any comments or questions that they themselves would like to ask Dr. Helen Hermann? If there isn't, thank you, Dr. Hermann, for the very great sharing and your ideas and the things that you've done. I think that we do really, really appreciate. Do stay on. We do have a few other interactions, especially.
Yeah, unfortunately, I need to leave almost right now. But
okay.
It's been great to be here and to interact with all of you, and look forward to our meeting at some stage. So bearing in mind Rachel's comment that now that we've got used to staying in one place, we realize the benefits as well from that to the planet and to all of ourselves.
That is true. And I do believe we would be able to put you in for future programs. I think we can always pen that in. All right. It's very great to have you. Thank you again very much for sharing your points and your stories. With that, I would actually like to take a slight detour now. I know we did mention we're going to ask Professor Dewa to talk about this and a few others, but we actually have two medical students who kind of volunteered to say that they want to be on the spotlight, to actually be questioned or be asked. And I'd like to just invite the two of them up first, Kuhan and also Jeevan, but I suddenly realized that Jeevan is no longer here. Did he just got disconnected?
Hi, I guess ask him.
Okay, now no worries. So basically what happens is these two students are, you will actually see Nicholas later. He will be talking about art and psychiatry. These are two students under him, and they have been very active. They have gone around and make a lot of noise among in the psychiatry scenes, at least in Malaysia, where they go beyond a traditional medical student role. So they weren't only focusing on passing exams, they were actually going beyond the mile by attending quizzes that, they even beat some of the very senior psychiatrists in the quiz and made it to very advanced areas. So I actually got them here because I want to ask them a little bit on their perspective, how they feel about psychiatry and mental health, and also why Kuhan and Jivan I think will come in later. Why did the two of them have so much interest in psychiatry to the point where they went beyond the traditional books, that they went beyond this scope? Maybe Kuhan, you could have a little say about your little journey with mental health and psychiatry and all this.
Okay, hello, good. It's evening for me right now in Malaysia, it's 4 p.m. So good day, everyone. So first of all, I'll start with the introductions. So I'm Kuhan, like my name is Kuhan, but then you all can just call me Kuhan, and I'm a year 2 medical student in University of Malaysia, Sabah, in Sabah. So first of all, this journey to as Dr. Eugene Ko mentioned, like going beyond a mental health, it all started when we participated in a mental health debate competition that was held. The only reason we wanted to participate in that is so that we would be able to give some sort of recognition to my university, as it is in a very remote area. So many universities don't actually give us a proper chance or anything. So the moment we got this, we decided to take part, and we technically wanted to learn more also about mental health, but then we also wanted to get an identity. So we just went in and we tried our best, and to our surprise, we managed to get we went up to finals, and sadly we lost in the finals. But the journey through this, preparing arguments and everything, has actually opened up our minds to more and more chances in psychiatry and mental health and what's going on around us. If I'm not wrong, one of the motions for that debate was that about how social media actually promotes suicide and etc. So we had to explain, and we had to make our research on how this promotes or does not promote. So it actually has a lot of interesting facts in them. Then we also were intrigued by the method that one of our doctors used on us in order for us to practice and be more, like work more together as a team, where he used this Legos. You might heard of this research from Dr. Sorry, I forgot his name. So he used this Lego, and he trained us. He gave us this set of Legos to play with, and he'll give us the motion, and we have to build up like models of the emotions that we think we want to speak out, and then we pass it around and we try to guess what the other people are trying to say, and it actually worked. So this brought us into thinking that, okay, so if obviously we can't use physical Legos to work on during our debate competition, so we had to use our imagination. So it actually helped us working on and constructing our ideas. Then once we've done with this debate, we thought, okay, why should we just stop here? Because what we're learning in our medical school is only like 10%, if I'm not mistaken, because we're just now year 2. So we decided to explore further, and we joined these quizzes and etc. We surprisingly made it to the finals as well in the quizzes. How we made this far, I just say we're lucky, because these aren't like the quizzes, that facts that they asked in the quizzes aren't expected to be asked in psychiatric quizzes, especially the pop culture questions and so on. So we barely went on the pre-existing knowledge that we had and info for the first round. As we proceeded, like we surprisingly won the first round, then as we proceeded, we decided to meet up and exchange random facts about anything we knew that might be asked. And surprisingly, some of them were like questions on modern musicals were easy, because one of our members, she's a crazy fan of especially like Hamilton, etc. So she was able to answer the questions, and she also passed on these knowledges. As for medical-based questions, we were also lucky, because we just ended our class and our module on neurology, etc. So we were able to use the knowledge that we just obtained through these quizzes over here. Basically, this quiz helped us use the everyday knowledge we had in a proper environment. Yeah, that's what I would like to say.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, actually, thanks for the actually quick introduction. I think Kuhan and his team actually represents a lot about what Dr. Norman Sartorius was talking about earlier, where communication skills, the ability to be able to sell things, the ability to talk through things. comes in very handy. And that skill gave them a very high upper edge compared to even medical officers or doctors who graduated already, and that allowed them to excel in a lot of these activities. A little side note, I used to get very scared whenever Kuhan and his team comes to any of my former talks. They would ask really, really tough questions that I'm scratching my head. It related to my talk, but really, really tough questions that even I sometimes will have to take a pause and say, I'm not quite sure how to answer your. And I do enjoy their presence actually, because I find that they provide a certain level of intellectual stimulants in this kind of activities. And I do hope that whatever they do here, and one of the main reasons I invited them to come and share was that their sharing will actually inspire other medical students and all this to look beyond the textbook, to look beyond just studying and passing exams. Medical school life actually have much, much more you all could do. And we have also talked about bits and pieces here about advocacy work, about mental health activities, being involved with primary care, so on and so forth. And I do hope that this expansion will actually be carried on across the globe, because as we know, education is going to move towards that direction. And at the end of the day, it is going to make you a much better clinician, a much better doctor when you do come out, when you're armed with all these experiences. All right. With that, I would actually like to, we do have two more things planned for today. One is a sharing about art and psychiatry. And one is actually our very last panelist today, a very quick interview. I would actually want to invite Dr. Parameswara Deva up to come up. It's your spotlight time, and we will ask you some of the questions, and let's see how it goes. But we will try to keep this within time limits so that everyone will have the opportunity, and we could wrap up within maybe in about 20 minutes time, because we have been sitting through this. So Dr. Deva, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to take up more time because, you know, we are running late, and a lot of people have contributed valuable things. I think, as somebody said, we could go on this for many more sessions and we still wouldn't have scratched the surface, because mental health is such a huge area of neglect rather than huge area of importance in the unequal world we live in. So I'll go through very quickly. The title of my presentation, actually I have got slides, but I don't want to show you that. I show you my handphone, which may be easier to read. Actually, it's a title. I will go through some of the pictures. Teaching for change in psychiatry. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest problems that I faced since I got into psychiatry 51 years ago was that psychiatry in those days was just beginning to come to grips with the medication that was available. It was available since 1954. But the way patients were treated and the way students were taught had not changed. Students were still taught in many places in mental hospitals, in locked wards, and so on. So I was very curious to know, why can't we change? And that's how it all started. So what happened was, as I said, I've been teaching for a long time. Every batch of students, from the time I was a young medical officer teaching them until now, I've asked them, how do they feel about being in a psychiatric ward? And we were in the university hospital, which is relatively sort of normal general hospital with a psychiatric ward, not a locked ward. It's got lifts going in and out. And every one of them has told me they feel very frightened. They feel very frightened at coming to psychiatric ward because it's dangerous. There are violent patients, which is true. And the feeling was generally one of a negative attitude towards mentally ill, because mentally ill means psychosis, means madness, and that's it. So all that we talked about earlier, how to dilute this concept of psychiatry to include social problems, anxiety, depression, work-related problems, family problems, didn't matter, because every day you're reminded that there's security. You have to make sure that the patients are looked after because they might become violent. And this is actually the picture of 3 teaching hospitals which I've worked in or visited. The one with the orange or brown colored door is actually from a developed country. I don't want to mention any names. And the 2 of the others are teaching units of low-income countries or LAMICs. So it's not only the rich country, not only the poor countries, but also the rich countries that have the same problem. So the constant theme, and in fact this year's theme as well, about the unequal world, emphasizes again and again in mental health about the stigma. Now, I just want to cut short this whole thing by telling you, stigma is not new. It's not unique to psychiatry. I don't know if all of you remember, at least the senior ones of you remember, most mental hospitals and most leprosy asylums and most TB asylums were all situated together. I've seen it in Europe, I've seen it in Asia, I've seen it in the Pacific. They were all put together because all were dangerous areas. Nobody wanted to go there. As was mentioned earlier, that nobody will allow you to mix with a mental patient or a TB patient or a leprosy patient. The good news is leprosy and TB have got rid of the stigma long ago. I come from Malaysia, which hosted the 2nd biggest leprosy asylum in the world with over 5,000 patients. It's now a garden city. It grows flowers, turfing for gardens and all that. No more leprosy patients. There are leprosy patients. They're no longer patients. They are now running garden shops. Some of them are millionaires. And how did this happen? Because, and I found this out in my work later on, working for international agencies, that what happened was the medication came first, the will to change came second, from the politicians, from the professionals. And we managed to get rid of the disease and the stigma. We have got the medication. We've got tons of medication. Every other webinar in psychiatry is about the newest medicines. But it doesn't change the stigma. The stigma is still there. So what happened is we need to think out of the box. We need to think out of the box into things like teaching psychiatry in non-psychiatric wards, in a primary care setting, and call it a stress management ward. You can see that. There's a stress management ward in Fiji and other places. And more than that, go on to this, start a stress management clinic, which after many years of thinking and cajoling and quarreling with my superiors, I started on my own, a stress management clinic, where the emphasis is on stress, on anxiety and depression in the primary care setting. Somebody asked a question earlier. I think it was mentioned by the president of the WPA as well as the former president of the WPA, that curriculum needs to be changed. And also the president of the WFMH. The curriculum needs to be changed. As I said earlier, I'll repeat it again, because that's the last part I want to mention. You can change the curriculum anytime, because the faculty of medicine, including Eugene's faculty, couldn't care less what you taught in psychiatry. But they won't give you 1 minute more. If you ask for 1 week more, no way. If you ask for a new building, no way. If you ask for a new room, no way. But you can teach whatever you want. Whether you teach psychosis, which is very difficult to treat, we all know that. And we know that psychosis is like the severe form of mental illness. Just like if we taught only cancer patients, dying patients in the name of medicine, internal medicine, that'd be ridiculous, isn't it? Now we are teaching the severe illnesses, which we need to know, but we need not do 100% in the psychiatric ward. We can teach them 30%, 25%, but 70% should be for 80% of the mental illnesses which have nothing to do with psychosis. So that is my appeal to all of you. Just 2 other sets of pictures, just all pictures, so not much talking. Now somebody will say, oh, my mental hospital in the LAMIC is so badly run, we can't do anything. We did it. In Malaysia, with a large mental hospital of 5,000 patients, we changed it. Please write to me. I can send you all the pictures, all the books, everything. And basically what we did was we changed the attitude towards care of the mentally ill. The ward that you see here, which is, I can't show this now. Yeah. You see how the terrible mental hospital became a garden hospital. And also, this is not only in the poor countries, in the tropical countries, but also in Mongolia, we did the same. We moved out of the mental hospital into community-based girls. Girls are what the Americans call yurts or tented houses. And that was done, 20 years ago. So it's possible to go to a developing country, poor country, and get all this done. But it requires the will of the psychiatrists who, sad to say, are generating stigma. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deva. I do think a little point. I think my university has kind of changed the way we have done teaching now. As we kind of move on, Ramin's nodding his head, so I'm going to guess he agreed. But yes, he does. The Deva did raise out a few points about education and the importance to move away from our traditional teaching. I do think that's very, very apt at this point of time. All right, so we're going to move on to our very last planned activities for today itself. I actually want to invite Dr. Nicholas. He is the epitome of what I call embracing psychiatry beyond the textbook. So he don't just run clinical services. He is actually trained in a way on some things that's not directly related to textbook, in particularly humanistic studies and psychiatry. He never actually, I didn't ask him what's he going to present today, but he did promise me it's supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be something very different from what most of us would experience. And Nicholas, I will leave it to you to pretty much tell us what you have in stock for us. Dr. Bullen, could you make Nicholas the co-host so that he could share the things? Nicholas, over to you. Nicholas? It's done. You could share it.
He is the co-host.
Yep, you should be able to try again. Sorry. I think there was a mistake with the setting just now because earlier, all this while, we haven't had anyone who share besides Ramin Luni.
Well, for a while, let's make him host if it will help.
We could, I guess.
Actually, he should have been able to share. But please don't forget to make me host once more at the end.
Nicholas?
He's not there?
He's there. He's texting me.
Yeah. Well, can I take back my host position? I'm afraid I will not. Nicholas, can you make me host once more? This is interesting.
I do apologize for the technical issue. There we go. Nick, could you just try to share again? I've just disabled all the sharing security. He can't speak. I think we're having the same problem where even earlier where David was having some issue. All right, he says he will rejoin and then we will see how. I think in the meantime...
well, if he goes out without making me host, that will be a problem.
You are host already, Bulan. You are host already.
Am I?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. So I think while we wait for him, Bulan, you wanted to ask some of our participants to kind of share in also to talk a bit more. Would that be anyone you have in mind?
Well, maybe Larry, Kemal might say a few words if they would like.
Hello.
Oh, that's Nicholas.
All good. So can you see me? Can you hear me? I assume you can.
Yes.
Oh. Okay, good afternoon from where we are. So I'd just like to speak a little bit about some interesting stuff as Eugene promises. So I agree that one of the crucial things about psychiatry teaching and education is that we need to take it out of the classroom for the simple reason that since the 18th of March 2020, the classroom ceased to exist as such as we knew it. We couldn't teach students the way we did. We couldn't bring them to the wards. And actually, we still can't in a sense. We can't actually bring students to our ward at the moment. We can't do face-to-face classes. And our students' contact has been significantly curtailed by the pandemic. So we felt that it was time to move on to some new ways of teaching students rather than barking down up the same tree over and over again, because that was clearly not going to be allowed by any government. So the first thing we did is we transitioned a lot of our, we started to transition to something that we've been always using. We've been using a film and psychiatry curriculum in our program, where we actually show students films and TV series, and we actually got them to watch entire series of, for example, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. We got them to watch a series called Maniac, which, despite the title, is actually a very interesting window into certain psychotic disorders. And we actually got them to follow through many patients. I put it in quotation marks because they could not see any real patients. So it was between watching some having very minimal virtual contact with a very small pool of patients, but we decided to expose them to a very, very wide variety of psychopathology. So what we actually did was, and this is an experiment we tried out of desperation, I showed various groups of my students Hamlet. I understand this is Malaysia. The English proficiency is not quite there, and most of them didn't understand it. But what was crucial about showing them Hamlet, the Kenneth Branagh version, was that they were able to appreciate the psychopathology of a person in mania. Because throughout Hamlet, if you look at the play carefully, you can appreciate both peaks. First, he goes into a depressive episode in the early first two acts. And then by the second and third, we were able to illustrate mania. And it was a textbook presentation of mania. One that actually many of the students, when they eventually did go to the ward, realized they couldn't see. Because when students go to wards, they see patients that have already been filtered. And they are pretty well by the time students see them because they don't work in the emergency department. So that was actually their best contact with an individual with mania, to be honest, even though they had gone to the ward subsequently. We also managed to illustrate using Shakespeare. We used Macbeth and Hamlet to illustrate the phenomena of dissociation. I challenge all of you to tell me how many times have you allowed your medical students to observe an individual dissociating? And the answer is probably it is impossible to catch that moment. We actually used Macbeth and Hamlet through Lady Macbeth and Ophelia respectively, different presentations, to showcase to students what dissociation was like, what the underlying psychopathology was. We even managed to do a simple formulation of how dissociation occurs as a way for individuals suffering great sexual or women-related trauma to block off their emotions and freeze. And we actually managed to improve the quality of our education because the pandemic prevented us from doing the old thing, which is just bring them to a ward, go and see loads of patients and come back. Because of the pandemic, we had to be more measured. We had to show them more well-curated things. And I think when my students went through an entire 4 series of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, they spent hours, if not days, with the borderline personality disorder individual in the show. And they really got to see this person moving through the different symptomatology of an individual and explore the inner sort of idealization, devaluation, conflicts of an individual suffering from borderline personality disorder. This would not have been possible pre-pandemic without using creative literature and the media, because they would have seen the patient once for a teaching class, then disappeared and just took their DSM-5 and said, great, I've learned something. But they actually got a far more comprehensive, more longitudinal picture of individuals suffering from both severe mental illnesses and also particular personality disorders. Apart from that, we also subjected them to a lot of sort of patients online, and we also use a whole bunch of simulated patients, both from the literature as well. The other thing we did with our students in terms of using creative arts is that we actually have a mindfulness program which we do with younger children around the region here. And we've been trying to teach mindfulness to young people, 13 to 18-year-old individuals in villages around. And let's face it, it's really boring, sitting down, breathing, focusing on your drawing the attention back to yourself. That's quite possibly the most boring thing you can ask a 13-year-old to do. So what we decided to do is we actually managed to gamify it a little bit, where we actually combine two ancient skills. One is mindfulness, thousands of years old. One is circus. We actually got the villages around us to build stilts, using traditional methods. And then we got them to do juggling, as well as we actually bought a few unicycles, and we got people to go on the unicycles after we did a traditional mindfulness exercise. So basically what we created is a circus-based mindfulness module, which allows them to become more mindful via the gamification tool of using circus equipment. The more mindful you are, the more able you are to be in the present moment, to drop the struggle against the fear, to be able to focus on your inner sensations, the better you are at walking on stilts and unicycling. That I can assure you. And once you're better at walking on stilts and unicycling, you will definitely be a more mindful person. So I think these were the two main projects where we combined the humanities in. We managed to bring in for two very different target groups. One is for the university students, where we made full use of the wide variety of things are available on Netflix during the pandemic, and show them certain psychopathologies in a more intense way. And then we moved to the other angle, where we went to villages and got them to do circus skills to improve their ability to do mindfulness, which is a very, very important skill, especially during the distress of the pandemic. Eugene is telling me I have no time. I would love to talk for hours, but I have no time. So thank you very much. And I hope all of you, if any of you are interested in our sort of non-traditional ways of teaching psychiatry, do drop me a line. We're trying to run research projects, and I've got a grant for the circus and the TV project as well, but we would welcome cross-cultural comparisons. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. I did message him at the back to kind of ask him to speed out a tiny bit. While we're going to do the wrap up, we do want to invite Dr. Kamal and Dr. Larry to kind of give opinions or ideas about everything that has been done. Would any of you would like to say something?
Larry, maybe you go first.
Sure. Listen, I joined this project really rather late, and I have to say, having watched you all and been more of an observer, when I work with medical students, most medical students are concerned about their curriculum and their exam, and they're pretty focused on their own day-to-day activity within their school. And to see medical students who have a bigger picture, not only of mental health, which automatically makes you special in my mind, but also makes it the point where you can take your interests and start to expand them with your schools and even between countries. You're much more ahead of me. I've not been much part of the international psychiatry until Dr. Barron got me into this committee. So thank you, Dave, for that. I hope you're still on the phone and can hear us. But I think that it is very important for us to be creative in education, which you heard about. I think we need to kind of react to the things we've had to deal with the pandemic, the evolution of psychiatry, and the fact that, being good docs is the first thing you want to master as a medical student. But whether you are a psychiatrist or not, recognizing how much mental health is part of health and how much treating mental health is part of what physicians do, whether they're psychiatrists or not. And so I would hopefully we can nurture your interest and keep you in the psychiatry fold. But it's just been wonderful to see you all working and communicating.
Well, Eugene, first of all, I mean, thank you very much. You did a great job. During the moderation. I also like to thank Bülent, Ramin, Rodrigo, Idil, Joyce is not here, Nicholas, for the support. I mean, it was an enormous process in such a short time period, almost in the past month, almost over the past 4 or 5 weeks. We've been trying to develop this event and also the event around this, around this week. So maybe I might, because it was wonderful to listen all those discussions around teaching of psychiatry. One of the things maybe I might add is the need for interdisciplinarity. I guess psychiatry has a lot to learn from other disciplines as well, not only within the domain of medicine, but also outside of the domain of the medical teaching. So bringing together with nurses, psychologists, also students from other areas. I mean, especially over the past 10 years, I'm working with design students, and it's created an incredible amount of energy, actually, bringing medical students or the students from the medical teaching with other disciplines. So I guess more and more we have to create experiences for reflection within the medical training. And I guess psychiatry is one of the most important candidates for this purpose. So saying that, it's been also great to be part of this team. Thank you very much for all your efforts. And I guess one of the aim of SEED under the umbrella of WPA will be to design further experiences where we can reflect on our own experiences in psychiatry, in medicine, or in medical teaching, and so we can develop it further into our professional development. Thank you very much for everything, and it's been great to see all of you on the screen. So have a wonderful Sunday.
All right, thank you very much. Last but not least, Rodrigo, who has also been very instrumental in handling a lot of the SEED projects and all these things. Would you like to share a bit about your thoughts, and just before we do the wrapping up and all this?
Yes, just a little, because I know we've been here for a long time, and for that, thank you very much, everyone who have attended our Zoom party, the med students who have been part of it since the beginning, and thank you very much, our distinguished participants as well, and for their participation. Yes, what can I say? Very little. Really, thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear that there was this. It was clear, the perception that there were no well-established hierarchies in the working group that put together the whole thing, because I love that. I think the way we learn as a group, the way we interact as a group, will reflect the way we interact with our clients, service users, patients as well. So if when we are talking among ourselves as equals, then it is very likely that this will be reflected also in the way we interact with our service users. And yes, yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
And thank you very much again for joining us throughout this whole. Bülent, we have been here for 2.5 hours already. I leave it to you to have the final word to wrap up everything, and we'll pretty much call it a day then.
Thanks, Eugene. Thanks all of the participants, all of those who have contributed, and also to those who have been watching this on live YouTube streaming. And I would also like to thank those who are going to watch this in future. I believe some will do that. Coming to most recently what Kemal has said, I would like to tell once more that this intention working with medical students for this year was only for this year. As you may see in the name of the seed, it's not seed in psychiatry, but seed in mental health. So the other components of mental health, including the mental health workers or mental health disciplines, I fully agree with him that we should also include other members of other sectors as well. Maybe as this develops, we will be able to go into that. And for repeating once more that I want to underline the need to have similar activities in the future. I hope Dr. Sartorius said every month. That may be more ambitious than I could imagine, but we could do something periodically, I believe. We must do it. My last word should be thanking everyone, including, of course, the music played by Ramin and his team and all the others. I hope to see you all again. Have a good Monday. Have a good World Mental Health Day. Let's have our hands up and have a family picture. If one of us would take that.
My computer's kind of hang. I could try.
I could try doing
yeah, maybe you could do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Many thanks to all. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you when we see you. Have a good day.
Night.